The Element of Logic by R. Winterbotham. This story was only ever published in the August 1940 issue of Astonishing Stories magazine. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel Quasar Spectra. The Element of Logic. Dr. Newbury H. Sindo, whose name will go down in history, coupled with those of Plato, Aristotle, Kant, and Hegel, formulated that reason was about to come into its own again. Dr. Sindo was not, as his writings may indicate, opposed to experiment, but he believed there was too much experimenting and not enough thinking. The so-called experimental philosophers, who claimed reason was an impossible goal for humanity, that the world was incurably mad, and it was best to let it remain so, were led by Dr. Frank Galli, who condemned Dr. Sindo as an impractical man. Dr. Galli acknowledged that Dr. Sindo had some intelligent ideas, including the one about the world being crazy, but Dr. Sindo believed that mind eventually would triumph. Dr. Galli, according to Dr. Sindo, was a dabbler in inanities. In the year 3032, the scales were gimmicked in favor of Dr. Galli, for this worthy had a charming personality. He was large of body, muscular and solid, and when he laughed he rippled all over. He was not fat, but commanding. He tipped the scales at 240 pounds. In contrast was Dr. Sindo, mystical, dreamy-eyed, and aesthetic, a man of average weight and build who might have passed unnoticed in a crowd, for he lacked any attribute that was outstanding, except in the unimportant matter of brain power. Dr. Sindo, however, was a rebel against the unwieldy system of philosophy promulgated by Dr. Galli. That is why he formulated the school of inductive philosophy, which he later termed Inductive Acroamatism, too deep for the common herd and therefore unpopular. But I'm getting ahead of my story. Perhaps when I mention the common herd, I should include myself, for there was a great deal of the surprising in the fact that I, Cecil de Fugue, a timid amanuensis who wore shiny clothes on his back, glasses on his nose, and dandruff on his collar, should become identified with such an admitted mental giant as Dr. Sindo. But in the aggregate, I was only a spectator, and my part in the controversy and its bizarre climax was only minute. I entered the employment of Dr. Sindo on December 19th, 3038. My duties were the taking of dictation and the transcribing of notes for Dr. Sindo's books and lectures. It was natural that in this capacity I should learn much about Dr. Sindo's school of thought. It is, in fact, a revival of the scholasticism of the Dark Ages, Dr. Sindo admitted after charges had been hurled at him by Dr. Galli. However, instead of discussing trivialities, we talk about important realities. We build worlds of reason and fortresses of logic in which to hide from the experimental philosophers. There has been too much useless research, too much experimentation. Dr. Galli is dabbling while knowledge rots. To this, Dr. Galli replied that progress had dated from the time when experiment took the place of speculation. When science ceased wondering about things and began to find out, the world emerged from the Dark Ages, into which Dr. Sindo would plunge us once more, barked Dr. Galli. Dr. Sindo did not really believe that all experimentation should be abandoned. His war was with useless experiment, such as collecting voluminous data on the average diameter of raindrops and the wave patterns of non-existent types of energy. But to carry his point with the public, he adopted a plan of attack familiar to all reformers. He denounced everything, good or bad, that was proposed by his opponents. Dr. Sindo decried the theory of experiment. "Only logic is sound," he asserted. "We must inquire as did Plato and Socrates. We should discuss realities, as did Hylas and Philonous in the dialogues of George Berkeley. Like Hylas, we should be a long time distrusting our senses and believe we are seeing things by a dim light through false glasses. If our senses lie, then experiment will tell us nothing because we can know the external world only through our senses. Better it is to reason from Descartes' first step, cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am." For 7 years, Dr. Sindo and Dr. Galley fought, each chiding the other that what he taught was of no practical value. Dr. Sindo berated the experimental scientists for contentions of accuracy of measurement, when by their own experiments they showed that material relationships were constantly changing, and any measurement was, at most, good only for the instant it was taken. Then, 1 year after I had entered Dr. Sindo's service, a cordially worded note came through the mail to Dr. Sindo from his archenemy, Frank Galley. "My dear Dr. Sindo," ran the note, "one of my co-workers in the Cincinnati University has discovered a remarkable compound which should end this war we are waging on each other. Suppose, for the nonce, that we call a truce, investigate this find, and let nature herself decide which of us is in the wrong." Dr. Sindo read the note aloud, and after he finished, he replaced it in the envelope. For several minutes he sat in his chair, thinking deeply, tapping his thumbnail with the envelope and pursing his lips. I knew that he was considering the strange letter from all angles. He did not wish to rush blindly into something that might be a trap, and lend everlasting discredit to his school of inductive acroamatics. Then, at length, he turned to me. "Pack the grips, Cecil," he said quietly. "We are going to Cincinnati to teach that rogue, Dr. Galley, the error of his ways." Secretly, I feared the outcome, for I knew that true progressive science could be neither all blind experimentation nor wholly wordy logic. If the test devised by Dr. Galley was sound, it would lead to the discrediting of my employer. We went by stratosphere plane, and we were met at the airport in Cincinnati's upper levels by Dr. Galley. From the port, we were whisked by pneumatic conveyor down to the 98th level, where Dr. Galley had his home among the subterranean gardens underlying the Ohio River. Below the surface of the earth, the warming glow of the ultraviolet illuminators, the charming rusticity of the underground grottos, and the cordial welcome extended by Dr. Galley were completely disarming. The university, an educational subsidiary of the Experimental Philosophers, ran between the 50th and 100th levels of subterranean Cincinnati. It was a mammoth establishment with entire levels covering more than a square mile devoted to particular types of experiment. As soon as we had refreshed ourselves from our trip, we were taken upward to the 60th level, where we were led through long corridors and several locked doors to an isolated group of laboratories marked private. There was one central room into which Dr. Galley led us. Although the room was large, there was a minimum of equipment in it. In one corner was a huge magnetic freezer, capable of lowering temperatures of substances to within a few millionths of a degree of absolute zero. The freezer door was closed and locked with a spectrum combination which worked only by light of a definite spectrum. "You must be afraid of burglars," remarked Dr. Sindo, eyeing the lock. "My chemical, which I call atomic sublimate, is so different that it alarms me," said Dr. Galley as he opened the freezer. "It is a dangerous chemical, and it is more for my own protection that I keep it locked than for fear that it will be stolen." Dr. Galley donned insulated clothing and gloves and entered the freezer. He emerged a minute later, covered with frost and carrying a small, yellowish cube, which glistened like a gem in the light of the illuminators. As he emerged, Dr. Galley switched off the ultraviolet lamps that lighted the room and turned on some old-fashioned tungsten filament globes. "The sublimate deteriorates rapidly under ultraviolet radiation," explained Dr. Galley. Working swiftly, before the heat of the room melted the cube, he took 2 rabbits from a cage and placed them under glass bells on a laboratory table. Beside the animals, he placed a block of wood about a foot square. With a knife, he sliced the yellowish cube into 4 portions, 2 of which he placed in small bowls filled with milk, and the third he stood on top of the wooden block. The remaining piece of the cube he set inside the small refrigerated unit outside the large freezer. "This substance acts on every piece of matter known to science," Dr. Galley said. "Only when it is frozen will it remain inactive, and therefore I keep it at nearly absolute zero to prevent a worldwide disaster." "What is it?" Dr. Sindo asked. "I have welded atoms together to form a new element. I do not know its atomic weight, for it is far too active for such experimentation, but I know it is beyond the weight of any other element, and I have called it element number 95, since numbers 93 and 94 have been created artificially," Dr. Galley explained. "More than likely, the weight is above 750, but that is merely guesswork, inductive reasoning." "Poof!" Dr. Sindo scoffed. "Such exemplifies the crudities of experimental philosophy. It cannot see beyond the boundaries of its experiments. It knows of 94 actual and artificial elements, and it feels that it must call a new one number 95, when probably its number is much higher." Dr. Galley opened his mouth to retort. Then, seeming to restrain himself, he passed off Dr. Sindo's remarks with a laugh. Then, gingerly raising the glass bells, he shoved a bowl of milk to the 2 rabbits, who set about drinking the liquid. Atop the wooden block, the frozen chemical was melting, and the wood was absorbing the yellowish liquid. As the wood absorbed the atomic sublimate, it began to shrink. It decreased in size slowly, but at the end of an hour, it was small enough to place under a microscope. At the same time, the rabbits began shrinking, more slowly than the wood, since the body processes apparently resisted the reaction, although the rabbits showed no discomfort. Dr. Sindo watched without comment, but I could see that he was amazed by the chemical. Several times he glanced into the microscope at the block of wood, and at length he turned to Dr. Galley with the words, "It has vanished," which he quickly amended. "Apparently." "Quite correct," smiled Dr. Galley. "It has vanished so far as we can see, but we can still feel its weight. If I should place this microscope on the scales, I would find that it weighed its own weight, plus that of the block of wood." "And what of the rabbits?" asked Dr. Sindo. "Doesn't that stuff harm them?" "So far as our experiments have shown, it does not harm them," said Dr. Galley. "The rabbits were given only a small dose, not comparable to that placed on the block of wood, so these creatures will not disappear entirely, and we may watch them under a microscope." "Just what is the action?" asked Dr. Sindo presently. "The atoms are collapsed without a change in structure," explained Dr. Galley. Somehow I caught a malicious leer, just a trace, in his eye as he spoke. "It is an action that has occurred in the galactic system before, however. The proof exists in the dwarf stars of the universe. Pausing for a moment, he glanced from Dr. Sindo to me. Then he strode to a cabinet and brought out a bottle of brandy labeled Napoleon, although it had been manufactured in 3014 A.D. I believe, he continued as he poured the bottle into 3 glasses, that dwarf stars have been created by the presence of atomic sublimate in their structure, or at least some of them have been made that way. A quantity of the sublimate, and not a great quantity at that, might reduce the Earth to the size of a small asteroid. That is why I guard the chemical so carefully. Doesn't the reduction in size, the shrinking of the electron orbits, necessitate a loss of energy? Asked Dr. Sindo. There is energy lost, replied Dr. Galley with a nervous laugh as he walked into the next room. He called back, but instead of energy being given off as heat or light, it emanates in the form of radio waves, detected only by receiving sets. Dr. Galley returned to the room presently without offering an explanation for Dr. Sindo. How you expect this substance to settle our philosophical differences? Galley slid into a chair and sipped his brandy. Dr. Sindo raised his own glass to his lips and drank while I secretly held my glass over the laboratory sink and poured the contents down the drain. I am anxious to try the sublimate on a human being, began Dr. Galley. There is much to learn of the small things of this world. My creed calls for experimentation in all fields, yet I cannot find one of my co-workers willing to sacrifice his own future for the cause. It would mean entering a life alone, beyond contact with all other human beings, save by means of radio transmission, for there is no antidote to the sublimate. With you, I hoped to find a willing subject. You might even take your secretary, Mr. Defugue, with you if he is willing. In the microscopic world, you will be alone. You can think and expound logic, and you might even find a different logic there than you have on this earth. If you find that truth and reality change with size, then experimental philosophy has been right. But if you should find that reason is unchanged, truth is unchanged, and reality is unchanged with size, then I will admit that I have been in error. No matter what happens, the record of your experience will be a gift to the world. Dr. Sindo nodded. It is a great honor to be selected for such a noble work, he declared. But why, Dr. Galley, don't you do it yourself? Alas, sighed Galley, I have not finished my work of experimentation as yet. Were it not for that, I would not hesitate. Dr. Sindo shook his head. I'm afraid I can't help you, he declined. You brought me here under false representation. What you really wish to do, Dr. Galley, is to rid the world of me. By using the chemical on me, you can carry on your experiments with the sublimate, and at the same time rid the world of a dangerous rival. It would not be murder, since the chemical would not stop me from living. I would be unharmed, except reduced in size. No, Dr. Galley, your plan is too thin. A slow, evil smile crept over Dr. Galley's face. You think so, Dr. Sindo? He asked. It isn't as thin as you think. Already, I had decided that you and your secretary should sacrifice your size for experimental philosophy before I invited you here. That brandy you drank contained an unused portion of the sublimate I brought from the freezer this afternoon. While you were intent on the shrinkage of the rabbits and wooden block, I slipped it into the brandy bottle. Perspiration broke out on my brow as I realized how nearly I had come to the loss of most of my 5'10". Then I suddenly realized that Dr. Sindo, through inexorable logic, had foreseen the trick and saved the day. Dr. Sindo was laughing and pointing to the glass in Dr. Galley's hand. It had shrunk to 2/3 its former size. "I changed glasses on you, Frank," Dr. Sindo laughed. "You didn't think I would guess why you left the room after you poured the brandy. But inductive philosophy teaches that there is a reason for everything and how to find that reason. I deduced you took your glass out of the room to deteriorate the sublimate under ultraviolet illuminators in the next room. My logic saved my size, Dr. Galley, and now it is up to your experimental philosophy to save yours." Dr. Galley's eyes bulged as he looked at his shrunken glass. It was the last time anything on him ever bulged. He started to shrink. "You fiend!" he roared. "And what would you have done to me?" Dr. Sindo asked. "Along your line of reasoning, both of us are equally fiendish." But Galley had never reasoned. It was contrary to his beliefs to reason, and besides, he was beyond reasoning at that moment. He charged toward Dr. Sindo, and I think Dr. Galley would have killed him had Sindo shown fear. But once more, reason and logic saved Dr. Sindo's life. Dr. Sindo held his ground. "You forget, Frank," said Dr. Sindo, "that if you should shrink to the size of a microbe, Cecil and I would be the only ones to know about it. Nothing must harm us, and you cannot hurt us without jeopardizing yourself. It is we who must give the alarm so that an attempt may be made to save you, if experimental philosophy can save you." "Experiment will save me," cried Dr. Galley. "Get in touch with my workers. Tell them to get to work at once on something to counteract the sublimate." Within a few minutes, Galley was the size of a 10-year-old boy. He had shrunk completely out of his clothing. "Hurry!" he pleaded in a piping voice. "Call my workers!" Dr. Sindo turned away with a laugh. "I'll make you do it!" roared Galley savagely. Dr. Sindo turned calmly to meet the charge. Despite Galley's weight, which still was 240 pounds, despite his loss in size, Dr. Sindo had the advantage of size. Sindo's arms were longer, and he could land blows at will without permitting Galley to come close to him. At length he floored Galley, and with my help we bound the pygmy with strips of his own clothing. "Hadn't we better call some of his assistants?" I asked after we had secured the little man. "I suppose so," nodded Dr. Sindo, "although it would give me great pleasure to watch him shrink into nothing." We turned away and started toward the door. We had determined now to let experimental philosophy have its inning. As we walked toward the pneumatic lift, we heard a staccato tattoo of little footsteps behind us. We turned in time to see a 2-inch man with eyes shining murder charging toward us. He had shrunk out of his bonds. The attack was too sudden to be averted, and now Dr. Sindo's size was a disadvantage. A 240-pound projectile sailed through the air, felling Dr. Sindo like an ox. I stared, too startled to move, and saw Dr. Galley, now less than an inch tall, drag Dr. Sindo back toward the laboratory. From the floor came a barely audible squeal.
"See now, if inductive acroamatism can save you, Dr. Sindo."
I managed to collect my wits and dove toward Dr. Sindo, who seemed to be moving without cause. I searched the floor for the tiny man just as Dr. Sindo opened his eyes. "He's the size of a grain of sand, and he's climbing up on my body," said Dr. Sindo. "I can feel him." I tore away the clothing from Dr. Sindo's chest, but I was too late. From his chest oozed a small drop of blood. Dr. Galley's 240 pounds had caused him to sink through the skin, and he was in Dr. Sindo's body. I watched Dr. Sindo die, slowly and horribly. At first there were twitchings of pain as Dr. Galley swung from Dr. Sindo's nerve ends. Then there were exquisite tortures as Dr. Galley collapsed blood vessels. Dr. Galley carefully lacerated Dr. Sindo's lungs, pounded his liver into a pulp. Every internal action of the human microbe was calculated to bring the most pain and a slow, horrible, inevitable death. Vainly I called for aid, and laboratory workers did come to my assistance after Dr. Sindo had died from 1,000 nerve-rending tortures. We tried to lift Dr. Sindo's body, which, with the included 240 pounds of Dr. Galley, would not budge until we got a stretcher. The authorities graciously permitted me to perform an autopsy, and by aid of an X-ray, I located Dr. Galley hiding in the left ventricle of Dr. Sindo's still heart. There was no problem of extricating the 240-pound mite, for Dr. Galley was anxious to leave. He seemed to be suffering tortures as extreme as those he had inflicted on Dr. Sindo. I could not hear his voice, and by the time we had used the remaining stock of the atomic supplement to shrink a shortwave radio to Dr. Galley's size, the midget had died. With Dr. Galley's death, the experimental philosophers passed out of existence for lack of a leader, and without the experimental philosophers, the inductive acroamatists went out of existence from pure ennui. There was a great deal of mystery surrounding Dr. Galley's death, but as a final triumph for inductive reasoning, I have written these words to show that the acroamatists alone could solve the puzzle. Dr. Galley was too small to be given an autopsy, but reason can probe any death. The experimental philosopher came to his death from starvation. His 240-pound body still needed the same amount of food he had consumed before his reduction in size, and his infinitesimal digestive tract was too small to hold it. We had fed Galley food reduced by the supplement to the proper size, but the impregnated food acted to reduce Galley's size still further, so that he never could eat enough to sustain life. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.